One of the worst parts about college admissions is that tens of thousands of applicants will neither be admitted nor denied. In this video, I talk about the admissions purgatory of appeals, waitlists, deferrals, and letters of continued interests. Receiving one of these outcomes is like the boy or girl strung along by their crush who can't make up their mind whether to ask them to the prom or not. Or they get asked only for their crush's first and second choices to say no. Many of these issues come down to early decision and action processes that I discussed in the previous video. These programs serve the needs of institutions at the expense of students' well-being and flexibility. Most early applicants are deferred until the regular admissions application deadline, when they're considered among all of the other applicants. Deferred applicants often scramble to complete a battery of regular decision applications before the January 1 deadlines. A 2020 data assessment by Ivy Coach crunched the numbers to determine which Ivy League universities admit their early applicants or deferred them to the regular pool. They estimate that, on average, 90% of deferred students are eventually denied. For example, Brown admitted only 7% of their deferred early applicants. Occasionally, deferred students are offered a spot on the waitlist, which is kind of a double limbo. Deferral is the enrollment management equivalent of texting someone and saying, "Hey, you up?" after going home from the party alone. Another tool in the enrollment manager's kit is the elusive waitlist. No applicant ever knows why they're invited to join the waitlist rather than being denied outright. They might assume they're a borderline applicant, but that isn't always the case. Perhaps the enrollment management is worried about getting enough butts in the seats for a specific major or program. Waitlists are like contestants on The Bachelor who are invited to join the rose ceremony when everybody knows in advance that Ari is totally going to choose either Hannah or Becca. But hey, it's better than an outright rejection, right? I'm doubtful. Waitlists are a special kind of hell for applicants because universities provide no guarantees that they'll even notify applicants of admission or rejection after the national decision day of May 1st. Carnegie Mellon, for example, added another layer of confusion with a tiered priority waitlist, whereby some students receive their decision by May 10th, with the remainder hearing back by June 1st. Almost everyone is fiercely resistant to an admissions by a lottery, but in practice, waitlists are precisely that. Universities want to see how many students submit enrollment deposits and admit students from the waitlist depending on the number of spaces available at the university or specific programs as that fall enrollment nears. Applying to highly in-demand programs decreases the likelihood of gaining admission off the waitlist or after an appeal for reconsideration. Waitlists and appeals are similar, except if waitlists are contestants on The Bachelor, people who are appealing are the thousands of rejected contestant applications who are begging in their 60-second video submission to get a second look so that way they can be on the program. I'll share with you a story. The first and worst waitlist case I ever encountered was in 2012 when I worked in admissions for UT Austin. UT that year offered a few hundred students an invitation to join the waitlists. In some years, everyone gains admission off the waitlists, but in others, maybe only a handful, like less than 10, will get in. And in that year, 2012, a few students were offered admission off the waitlist. There was one student who'd been communicating with me throughout the admission cycle, and they even sent me a handwritten note where the envelope was made from a Google Maps printout showing the route from their home in Plano down to Austin. And she even brought office cookies to us in April after I insisted that, honestly, we have no powers over the waitlist. But who are we to refuse fresh-baked snickerdoodles? Admissions counselors aren't monsters or dentists, after all. Enrollment managers, on the other hand, subjected this student to an insidious purgatory. She received a notification in early May that she was not offered admission off the waitlist. And she called me, literally crying. Because so many other enrollment deadlines had already passed for her backup universities, she began the groveling process at her backup schools that she had previously declined in order for them to allow her an exception to enroll. She put down an enrollment deposit elsewhere, only to receive a phone call a few days later from a senior UT official that they had made a mistake. They had actually intended to admit her from the waitlist, but someone had literally hit the wrong button. Congratulations, you're a Longhorn. Nobody can tell you why. Most universities are relatively stable in how many students they invite to join the waitlist and subsequently admit, but unsurprisingly, this data is not easy to find. Universities are rarely forthcoming with their waitlist statistics. NACAC reports around 20% of waitlisted students will eventually gain admission, but that range varies widely depending on the university, and it's not even tied to selectivity or prestige. For example, highly selective Caltech and moderately selective Drexel admitted only 1% of their waitlisted students for fall 2018. In the same admission cycle, highly selective Boston University recorded over 3,400 students who joined the waitlist, with only a single student gaining admission. Case Western Reserve admitted 0 students, around over 9,900. And this is like a lottery ticket where everybody is a loser. In contrast, Indiana University admitted 427 out of 467, or 91% of their waitlisted applicants, while UC Berkeley admitted 1/3 of their waitlistees, which is the most competitive public university in the United States. Some universities rank list their waitlisted students, whereas others don't, so you can never be quite sure why a decision went one way or the other. A lack of waitlist transparency casts doubt on students who do succeed because they wonder if they're a genuinely desirable applicant or simply a number to meet an enrollment metric, particularly if they're an underrepresented minority. It could have been due to the university's needs, or perhaps you just didn't make the cut. But you're never going to know just how close or far you were to gaining admission or rejection. An additional layer of hell that I'll discuss in this video is letters of continued interest, along with other invitations to improve your candidacy. And these were an especially fun time for fall 2020 enrolling students coping with the pandemic during the spring and summer. The blog Prep Scholar provides several helpful tips for devastated students stuck in limbo. They suggest even writing an unsolicited letter of interest, sending resume updates, mid-year grade reports, staying in touch with your assigned admissions counselor, and even retaking the SAT and ACT. And all of those suggestions to me just sound a little bit overboard. Students as a result experience waitlist fatigue, which is a kind of non-adaptive choice switching, whereby even after gaining admission off the waitlist to their dream school, they decide to enroll elsewhere. Others suffer from what's called planned continuation bias, where they're simply unable to accept that the admissions door has almost undoubtedly closed, so they exhaust every avenue to overturn a decision, like in that Prep Scholar blog post. What the waitlist means for most applicants is yet another battery of essays. It makes me wonder how many tens of thousands of additional essays are written at the end of the admissions process, only for the vast majority of students to still not gain admission. Many Redditors simply report copy and pasting their continued interest essays for their varied waitlisted universities, and honestly, I can't say I blame them. Many universities have made a sport out of a student's desperation into a kind of groveling Olympics. They generously allow students to submit recommendation letters, which places additional burdens on already overextended high school staff. Because others have less clear policies about updating the application, there's always an ambiguity surrounding which universities do or don't want or accept additional materials. Applicants are fooled into thinking they exercise some level of control over their outcomes. However, implicit in appeals and continued interest letters are a kind of special pleading where the applicant is attempting to establish themselves as something like an exception to a generally accepted rule without justifying that exemption. Or, put another way, really badly wanting to enroll somewhere doesn't distinguish you from the thousands of other hopefuls who also really want to get into that university and may well be deserving. That didn't stop, for example, an extended family coming, like the whole family coming into our office wearing burnt orange with a 3-ring binder filled up with like football game ticket stubs, multi-generational Longhorn gatherings and tailgates, and like multiple photos of like the child's bedroom decked out in all things burnt orange in UT Austin. Naturally, families assume that an unfavorable decision must certainly be a mistake of the decision makers, which is called the furtive fallacy. But since universities do routinely make mistakes, like in the case with that waitlisted student I mentioned earlier, it always gives students a sliver of hope. Errors on the university decision release side also add other layers of cognitive distortions on top of the college admissions madness. If elite universities genuinely cared about their applicants, they would eliminate or limit or at least bring transparency to practices like waitlists, appeals, deferrals, and letters of continued interests. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find my email in the information section of this video, so feel free to reach out if you're interested in working together.